So we have received a few feature requests for Toaster. One of them is that Toaster should be able to build layers that are not initialized as Git repositories. Also, that Toaster should be able to build without an internet connection. Other people have asked us to improve the layer development workflow with Toaster because at the moment it forces you to push the Git repository before you can actually test any changes you've made, and that makes for a slow process. And finally, there are other people who have asked us to provide more flexibility when handling user revisions. They want to be able to mix layers from different branches and create their own versions of layer index layers. So all of these requirements are connected to the way we're handling layers and the way we are allowing people to import layers. So this video is a proposal of how we could change the way we are handling layers in Toaster to accommodate all these four requirements. So we look first at imported layers. So Toaster currently has this option called import layer, and this option is used so that people can build with Toaster layers that are not in the layer index, and specifically layers that they are developing themselves, their custom layers. The first step in this form is still to give your layer a name, and the layer name must be unique because otherwise things can get very confusing. And here the changes start. In the existing Toaster, you have a form like this one here that asks you for Git information. But what we're suggesting here is to add a couple of options. You can import a layer by providing a Git repository, and that's the way we do things now. And you have this form here to allow you to provide the information you need to give us for that. But there is another option now, and it is instead of providing a Git repository, just enter the path to the source code of the layer. That might be maybe in your local machine, maybe on a different machine that could be accessed by Toaster. I'm not sure. This is to be determined. And the idea is that if you provide a Git repository, Toaster will require an internet connection to build your layer. But if you provide a local path, well, we will be able to build a layer without an internet connection. So if I select this option here, the form changes, and instead of asking me for the information related to the Git repo, it's just asking me, okay, give us the path. So you can provide the path there, and then you can just import and add to project as you do now. And Toaster has done now two things. It has imported your layer, so it now knows about your layer, and it also adds it to the project configuration, to the list of layers that are going to go to the bblayers.conf configuration file when you start a build. So your new layer that we have called meta path is now here. And if I click on the name to see all the details that Toaster knows about this layer, I just have one thing here, and it's the path to the source code that you have provided. But there is an option in there to add a Git repository. So basically, a layer is not a static thing. It doesn't mean that you will need to it will always have to stay as this kind of local layer. You can also provide a Git repository for it. And if you click the button, what you get is this form that is just like the existing form at the moment in the import layers page, where you need to enter the Git repository information. And it just contains an additional option, which is this checkbox in here that says use the Git repository for builds. And what this is doing is telling Toaster, when I build this layer next time or from now on, use the Git repository information instead of the local instead of the path to the source that you had before. So if this is not what I want to do, I just kind of check the box. And then you just need to click this big add Git repository button, and now Toaster has saved your changes, and now it has not only the path to the layer source that you provided before, but also the Git repository information that you have given it now. And it has a couple of things more. First of all, it has this item in here that says for builds, use this. In this case, the Git repository on the master branch. And that's because we check that we tick that checkbox before in the form. So basically, this is the default version of the layer that Toaster is going to build from now on. You can of course change it. So you can click Edit, and you will get a drop-down menu with all the different versions of the layer that Toaster knows about. And because for this one we just have a path to the layer source or the Git repository on master, you can switch back to the path and click Save, and that's it. And the other thing interesting in this form is that I've added the possibility to add additional Git revisions, so that you're not stuck with just building master. If you have a master next, or if you have a master under test, or if you have, I don't know, a different branch, you can add it in here as well. So you can have, against a Git repository, you can have more than one branch, or potentially a commit instead of a branch or a tag. So this is providing much more flexibility when it comes to handling revisions. Now, the idea is that this flexibility will not be exclusive of imported layers. The idea is to extend these to the layers that come from the layer index or that are already in the database preloaded, or to all layers that Toaster knows about. So this is the existing table with all the layers that Toaster considers compatible for your project. And you used to have this add layer button, and it has grown some additional options. So for example, this is a layer that only has a Git repository, and if you click on this arrow in here, you will get a few additional options like add another Git revision or add a path to a layer to the layer source. This layer, for example, it only has a local path, and when you click on it, you get these options in here, add a Git repository and delete layer and a few other bits and pieces. And finally, this one here has both. It has, it's like the one I showed you before. It has a Git repository and a path, and here the options are add a Git revision, or edit the layer information, or delete the layer. This column in here is no longer just showing you the revision of the layer. It's showing you the revision of the layer that is going to be used for the build. But because you can have more than one Git revision, now, when that is the case, when that exists, when you have a layer with more than one Git revision, you should be able to switch them very quickly, and this is what you can do from here. So this layer has a few branches for a specific Git repository, and it also has a path to a local path to the layer source, and I can select this. And from now on, for this layer called meta both, I will be building with the source code that lives in this directory that you have provided. And this is pretty much it.